The silence wasn't passivity, it was preparation. Find the truth, find it all, and bring it to me. She thinks she is fighting a PR battle. She has no idea she is under investigation. For 5 years, the world asked the same question. Why does Prince William stay silent? Why does he allow attacks on his wife to go unanswered? Why does he never fire back? The explanation offered was dignity, the royal motto of never complain, never explain, the high road. What became clear later was something entirely different. The silence was strategic, every accusation catalogued, every interview analyzed, every public statement filed away for future reference. William wasn't ignoring the attacks, he was building a case. Reports from sources within Kensington Palace indicate that the Prince of Wales has officially moved beyond traditional royal protocol. He has bypassed the usual palace advisors. He has bypassed the lawyers who counsel patience and restraint. According to these accounts, William has personally authorized the engagement of a top-tier international private intelligence firm. Their mandate is comprehensive, a forensic examination of every claim, every transaction, and every unexplained period in the Duchess of Sussex's biography. This is not a background check conducted after the fact. This is not a public relations assessment. This is described as a complete dismantling of a narrative that has dominated headlines for half a decade. The timing requires context to understand fully. The missing $12 million reported in previous coverage served as the immediate trigger, but the foundation for this response was laid years earlier. William's famous advice to Harry before the wedding, the suggestion to take more time to get to know this woman better, was dismissed as jealousy at the time. Sources now suggest it was an early warning that went unheeded. William reportedly observed patterns that concerned him from the beginning: the speed of the relationship, the media sophistication that seemed unusual for someone claiming to know nothing about royal life, the confidence in front of cameras that exceeded what palace staff typically witnessed in newcomers. On this particular occasion, the circumstances have shifted dramatically. The investigation reportedly covers 3 specific areas of inquiry. First, the financial architecture. Investigators have been tasked with tracing the funding sources for the Sussex departure from royal life, the arrangement with Tyler Perry, the current security expenditures, the destination of foundation funds that cannot be accounted for through normal channels. Second, the biographical gaps. The years between early acting work and the introduction to Harry contain periods that official accounts leave largely unexplained. The investigation seeks to document these intervals completely. Third, the workplace conduct allegations, the internal palace report on staff treatment that was never publicly released. William reportedly wants this material examined by external investigators who can interview witnesses under formal conditions. The approach being described represents a significant departure from standard royal practice. The men conducting this work are not palace employees concerned about protocol. They are professionals whose previous experience includes financial crime investigation and intelligence operations. Their methods are thorough. Their mandate, according to sources, is unlimited in scope. Behind closed doors, the tone was far more serious than public statements suggested. William reportedly views this as a matter of institutional survival rather than personal grievance. The attacks on Catherine, the implications about the family in various interviews and publications, the financial irregularities now emerging, these are treated as threats requiring a systematic response. The investigation is described as being funded through Duchy of Cornwall resources rather than official palace channels. This structure reportedly provides operational independence from the broader royal household. What many people don't know is that the work has already begun. Reports indicate investigators have been active for 72 hours. Inquiries are being made in Los Angeles. Archives are being accessed in London. The network being examined extends across multiple continents and involves individuals who believe their connections would never be scrutinized. The woman currently dealing with legal complications in other jurisdictions is reportedly unaware of this parallel investigation. The silence from Kensington Palace has been interpreted as passive acceptance of the situation. That interpretation appears to be incorrect. He watched the Oprah interview, he watched the Netflix series, he watched Spare, he took notes. The approach being described is methodical rather than emotional. Every public claim is being verified or contradicted through documentary evidence. every financial T. Transaction is being traced to its origin and destination. Every relationship is being mapped and understood. The investigation represents something new in royal crisis management, not reaction but anticipation, not defense but documentation. Those who have observed William's approach describe a patience that has been mistaken for weakness. The willingness to absorb attacks without responding created an impression of vulnerability. That impression is now being revised. The files are being compiled, the witnesses are being identified, the timeline is being reconstructed with precision that official narratives lack. And the subject of this investigation remains focused on other matters, unaware that the most comprehensive examination of her history is already underway. The investigation produced significant findings within its first days of operation. The discoveries did not originate in California as expected. They emerged from records connected to the Mediterranean region. Investigators examining travel records and financial transactions from the period before the royal relationship uncovered a pattern that required further examination. The name appearing on certain documents was not the one the public recognizes. It was an alias that had circulated in certain corners of the internet for years without verification. What the investigation reportedly confirmed was a connection that changes the understanding of how Meghan Markle entered royal circles. According to sources familiar with the findings, she did not first encounter members of the royal family at a garden party in 2017 as commonly believed. The investigation suggests earlier contact, years before the official introduction, in social circles that operated with significant discretion. This brings us to questions that have never been adequately answered. Why did certain members of the extended royal family appear unusually supportive of the relationship from its earliest days? Why were concerns raised by palace staff dismissed so quickly? Why was the standard vetting process reportedly compressed? The investigation is developing a theory based on the evidence collected. The early support may not have been enthusiasm for a modern addition to the family. It may have been recognition of someone whose presence created complications that silence could contain, but exposure could not. Sources close to the investigation describe a dynamic of mutual awareness. Certain parties understood aspects of each other's histories that created incentives for cooperation rather than conflict. The situation escalated faster than expected once investigators began examining this earlier period. A former security professional living in retirement in Europe has reportedly provided testimony to the investigation team. His account describes observations from years before the royal wedding, financial arrangements, social dynamics, the operating procedures of a world that functions on discretion and compensation. This testimony moves certain theories from speculation to documented witness statements. The implications extend beyond one individual's history. If members of the royal family had knowledge of circumstances that would have complicated the wedding, their silence becomes significant. If concerns about the marriage were dismissed not because they lacked merit, but because addressing them would expose other matters, the entire narrative of the Sussex saga requires reconsideration. William is reportedly grappling with evidence that suggests the family's response to the relationship was shaped by factors never disclosed publicly. The investigation has accessed records that palace archives contain but have never released, communications between family members discussing the relationship in its early stages, assessments from staff who raised concerns, documentation of decisions to proceed despite reservations. What became clear later was deeply unsettling. The evidence suggests the institution may have sacrificed thoroughness in vetting to avoid uncomfortable discoveries. The speed of the engagement, the compressed timeline before the wedding, may have served purposes beyond romantic enthusiasm. William's investigation is now examining whether his brother was positioned in a situation where the full picture was deliberately obscured. The question is no longer simply about one woman's conduct. The question is whether institutional failures enabled that conduct. Reports indicate the scope of inquiry has expanded to include internal palace decision-making during the period between the relationship's beginning and the wedding. Who knew what and when? Who chose not to ask certain questions? Who benefited from the lack of scrutiny? Even now, there is no official clarity on these matters. The investigation continues developing its findings. The documentary evidence is being organized. The witness statements are being recorded. The financial trails are being followed to their ends. Sources describe William's reaction to certain discoveries as combining vindication with horror. The vindication of having sensed something wrong from the beginning, the horror of understanding how deep the complications may extend. She didn't enter as a newcomer, one source connected to the investigation reportedly stated. She entered with knowledge that created leverage. The question is who else knew and why they stayed silent. The answers to those questions are being assembled in files that may eventually reshape public understanding of the entire Sussex period. The investigation has moved from examining one individual to examining the institutional response to that individual. The findings suggest failures that extend beyond any single decision or person. The panic in the family wasn't about who she was, it was about what she knew. William reportedly understands that the complete truth may implicate members of his own family in poor judgment or deliberate concealment. He has authorized the investigation to proceed regardless of where the evidence leads. The mandate is total. The protection of individuals, including family members, is secondary to the documentation of what actually occurred. The investigation took an unexpected direction when financial records led to medical facilities rather than banks. Payments traced through shell company structures connected not to investment accounts or real estate transactions, but to specialized clinics. The dates on these transactions aligned with periods that had attracted public speculation for years. Sources familiar with the investigation describe findings that shift the inquiry from financial misconduct to questions of biological reality. The examination of records from 2003, a period largely absent from official biographical accounts, reportedly revealed medical history that contradicts subsequent public narratives. Multiple reports point toward the same conclusion. The pregnancies that the world watched unfold, the photographs analyzed endlessly by observers noting inconsistencies, the birth announcements that lacked standard documentation, these are now being examined through the lens of what the medical records apparently show. This context matters for what happened afterward. Investigators reportedly traced payments to a specialized agency in California. The transactions occurred in 2018 and 2020. The timing corresponds precisely with conception timelines that were publicly announced. The payments were not labeled as personal medical expenses. They were processed through business entities and categorized as professional services. What many people don't know is the legal significance of these findings. British succession law contains specific requirements regarding heirs. The language of historical statutes refers to being born of the body. Children welcomed through certain arrangements, while loved completely as family members, may not meet technical requirements for succession to the throne. If the arrangements suggested by the financial evidence occurred without proper disclosure to the sovereign, the legal implications become severe. The investigation is now focused on documenting the complete chain of events. Sources describe William's response to these findings as profoundly disturbing on multiple levels. The institutional implications are significant, but the personal dimension, the possibility that his brother was not fully informed of arrangements affecting his own children, represents a betrayal of extraordinary magnitude. The evidence being assembled includes contracts processed through business entities rather than personal accounts, payment records that document final settlements, transportation logs that track movements of individuals and infants during relevant periods. Only later did the true impact become apparent. The questions that had circulated as speculation, the analyses of photographs, the observations about physical inconsistencies, these are being re-examined in light of documentary evidence that was not previously available. The investigation has identified individuals with direct knowledge of the arrangements. Interview requests have been made. Some witnesses have reportedly agreed to provide sworn statements. The testimony being gathered describes operational details that transform speculation into documented fact. William is reportedly coordinating with legal advisors about the constitutional implications of these findings. The question of how to address the situation involves considerations that extend far beyond normal family matters. The explanation offered raised more questions than answers. If the children's origins differ from public understanding, When did Harry become aware? Was he a knowing participant in arrangements that violated disclosure requirements? Or was he another victim of deception about matters as fundamental as the parentage of his own children? The investigation is developing evidence on his question as well. Sources describe communications and statements that suggest Harry's understanding of certain arrangements may have been incomplete, the possibility that he believed narratives that were carefully constructed for his acceptance. This shifts his potential status from accomplice to victim in proceedings that may follow. The investigation has just pivoted from finances to matters far more fundamental. The deadline approach for addressing these findings is creating pressure throughout the royal system. The evidence exists. The documentation is extensive. The question now is how the institution responds. Sources indicate that verification protocols are being prepared. The legal framework for requiring biological confirmation is being examined. The constitutional implications of various outcomes are being assessed. The children at the center of this situation are innocent of any wrongdoing. Their welfare remains a primary consideration in all discussions, but the legal requirements of succession cannot be ignored when evidence suggests those requirements may not be met. The investigation continues gathering documentation. Witnesses continue providing testimony. The picture becoming clear is one that no one in the royal family anticipated when concerns about the relationship were first raised years ago. The scope of what may have been concealed extends far beyond financial misconduct or biographical embellishment. If the evidence supports the conclusions being drawn, the implications affect the very structure of royal succession. The deadline passed without response. The verification protocol established by legal advisors required documentation within a specific timeframe. The requirement was straightforward. The consequences of noncompliance were clearly stated. No documentation was provided. In official terms, the absence of response triggered automatic consequences. The legal framework had been constructed to produce specific outcomes based on specific failures to comply. The royal household website was updated. The changes were not announced through press release or official statement. They simply appeared. Names that had been present were no longer visible. Titles that had been listed were no longer acknowledged. The digital presence of certain individuals within the royal structure was quietly eliminated. The full implications may only now be emerging. Legal experts familiar with succession law describe the situation in stark terms. The requirements for inclusion in the line of succession are not suggestions. They are statutory obligations established over centuries. When those requirements cannot be demonstrated to have been met, exclusion is not punishment. It is simply the application of existing law. The investigation William authorized has now produced its institutional consequences. What follows remains largely unexplored in public discussion. The distinction between divorce and annulment carries significant legal differences. A divorce acknowledges a valid marriage that has ended. An annulment declares that the legal requirements for marriage were never properly met. Sources indicate that proceedings are focusing on the annulment pathway. The grounds being examined relate to material misrepresentation. If one party to a marriage made statements or concealed facts that, if known, would have prevented the marriage from occurring, the legal foundation of that union is compromised. The evidence assembled over the course of the investigation reportedly supports this characterization. What happens next could redefine everything about how this period is ultimately understood. The social consequences of these legal determinations are already visible. Professional relationships that depended on royal association have been terminated. Media partnerships that offered platforms have been withdrawn. The network of support that sustained public presence has contracted rapidly. Sources on the ground describe the immediate aftermath in stark terms. Key figures who had been constant presences have departed. Files have been removed. The infrastructure that maintained operations has begun dismantling itself. Those who attach themselves to royal association are now calculating their exposure. The question is no longer how to benefit from the connection. The question is how to minimize liability for having enabled what the evidence now suggests. The isolation being described is comprehensive. Communication from former allies has ceased. Invitations to events have been withdrawn. The access that royal title provided has evaporated. Harry's situation is being addressed separately from his wife's. Reports describe a period of separation from public life. The processing of what has emerged requires time away from the attention that has defined his existence. The reintegration into family structures, if it occurs, will happen gradually and privately. His relationship with the children he has raised remains unchanged by legal determinations about succession. The love of a parent for a child is not affected by documentation requirements, but his understanding of his own marriage, his own choices, and his own family has been fundamentally altered. The House of Windsor identified a threat, isolated it, and eliminated it. The investigation files are being sealed. The documents that were assembled over the course of this work will not be publicly released. They will be preserved in archives with restrictions on access. The full record of what was discovered, what was verified, and what was concluded will remain confidential for decades. But the consequences of those findings are visible in the changes that have already occurred. The absence of names from official records, the termination of titles, the legal proceedings that are underway. William's decision to authorize this investigation represented a departure from traditional royal crisis management. The willingness to pursue evidence wherever it led, including into uncomfortable territory involving his own family's decisions, demonstrated a different approach to institutional protection. The monarchy has survived greater challenges than this one. The institution that has endured for 1,000 years has weathered scandals, abdications, and crises that seemed existential at the time. This chapter will be recorded as another such moment, a period when external threats were identified and addressed, a time when difficult choices were made to preserve institutional integrity. The investigation is complete. The findings have produced their consequences. The legal processes that remain will unfold through normal channels. And the silence that now surrounds certain individuals is not the silence of dignity or restraint. It is the silence of conclusion. The questions that dominated headlines for years have been answered. The speculation that filled countless hours of coverage has been replaced by documentation. The enforcer fulfilled his mandate, the truth was found, and the institution endures.